Rightio. Now, hopefully I can get through this really quickly without boring you or just babbling on for half an hour on each slide, but we'll see. As promised, I'm talking about insects in medicine. It's actually a fairly involved sort of field, and the amount of records about insects being used for medicinal purposes. But then, of course, health problems are universal, and it's also universal that people try anything to cure it. One of the earlier compilations of this sort of information that I found is the Compendium of Materia Medica, or the Great Pharmacopoeia, compiled in 1587 in China. This listed 73 different species from a whole range of orders used for medical purposes, and there was an addendum published a few decades later that expanded that list even further. So all these insects have been used in traditional Chinese medicine, but how much of that is actually connected to reality is debatable, because the same book, amongst other things, was claiming that Langur monkeys are 3 meters tall and can pull their lips over their own heads. So, and of course, some of these claims about the health benefits of insects in traditional Chinese medicine are still made today and have escaped into the wider world. For example, you can buy the Chinese black mountain ant extract, which is advertised as a cure-all, and amongst other things treats virility and a lot of other things, but it's an important thing to remember when you hear something being claimed as a cure-all, is that cure-alls cure nothing. Nonetheless, you can buy the stuff if you want, assuming that it is actually for the ants that they say it is, and assuming that they've made any care at all about what sort of dosage is in there, whether the other material put into the medicine is safe or not, or just stuff that's scraped out of the nearest chemical plant and poured into the bottles. So, and of course, there's absolutely no information on whether it's safe to use some of these traditional medicines in combination with other medication, especially when the doses aren't controlled. There is also the issue that some of the species that are collected for these sort of traditional medicines and that are now threatened to the point of being endangered. One of the more famous ones is the cordyceps species, Cordyceps chinensis. Cordyceps chinensis is an entomopathogenic fungus that infects tepialid caterpillars, and it's found on the plateau in Tibet, where it affects the caterpillars while they're still on the ground, and then bursts to the tops of their heads and sprouts out the matchstick-sized knob at on the. Hang on, there should be a laser point on this there. That's the actual fruiting body of the fungus. It's not very big, but every year when these things start emerging on the ground, tens of thousands of people head out onto the plateau to dig these up and collect them for their supposed medical value. So as a result, the fungus and the caterpillars are now quite threatened to the point of being considered endangered. And while they're out there collecting the stuff, they're cutting down the trees on the plateau to use as firewood. So it's a bit of a disaster all round. And I will give you 3 guesses why this particular caterpillar fungus demands ridiculously high prices and is being sought in huge numbers. Go on. 3 guesses what they're using it for.
Erectile dysfunction.
Correct.
Another award.
So, yes, but as I said, people all over the world have used insects in medicine for all sorts of purposes since well before recorded history began. I did find a 2021 paper which was talking to indigenous populations of various ethno groups in Nagaland, which is a tiny part of India over there. And this listed 50 different species across 28 different families and 11 orders that were used for all sorts of medical purposes. But the interesting thing is that of all those species, only one species did all of them agree was useful for one purpose. So everybody else was right, too far. Okay, this melioid blister beetle was regarded by all these different groups as a useful treatment for warts. So So it's interesting when you get a wide agreement about one species being useful for a particular purpose. It's not actually that surprising that these Mr. beetles actually are used for wart, and elsewhere in the world other species of meloid beetles are also used for treating wart, because there's the same idea when you're treating the wart in Western medicine with a blistering agent, and they used to have the more somewhat nasty, sort of corrosive topical medicines you put on the warts to break the wart down. It works. It's not subtle, but it works. And the chemical defences of these beetles are certainly enough to do the same sort of damage to a wart. So, right. But again, when you've got people over a large part of the world that are agreeing that one kind of insect is a useful treatment for one particular kind of medical problem, that attracts my attention. This might actually be legitimate. For example, weaver ants, both the species that we get here in Australia, is also found across much of Asia, and a related species in Africa. The indigenous populations in all those areas agree that weaver ants are good treatments for bad coughs and flu-like symptoms and so forth. But given what weaver ants taste like, that's probably the same reason that we enjoy a hot lemon drink when we've got a bad cough. So, right. Not that, of course, that Western medicine is immune to silly ideas. For many centuries, we had the issue with the doctrine of signatures in Western medicine, which assumes that, yes, there are plenty of things out there in the world that can help you treat your medical problems, but because you're stupid, we're going to give you great big hints. For example, the use of walnuts to treat brain issues. This also applies with various insects. For example, stick insects were used to treat weight loss. And another example, too far again, I will give you 3 guesses what dung beetles were used to treat. Correct! Constipation. So, right, and another really bad idea was, and this one went for centuries as well, was the use of Cantharides, an extract of the soldier beetles, litter from Vesicatoria, as an aphrodisiac. It was used as an external blistering agent for those medical applications where blistering was thought to be a good idea. It wasn't. But various idiots kept using this stuff as an aphrodisiac because one of the symptoms of cantharidism taken internally is a prolonged painful erection. So, Spanish fly, it's not a fly, it's of course a beetle, was being sold all over the world as a guaranteed aphrodisiac. This was incredibly stupid, and every time it kept coming up, it probably got banned by the authorities, not on any moral grounds, because the stuff is bloody dangerous. In the 50s in the States, for example, one man was jailed after he slipped 2 women Spanish fly lollies, and they died. One of the reasons that the Marquis de Sade, the guy that sadism is named after, was sentenced to death, is because he gave Spanish fly pastilles to 2 prostitutes, and they nearly died. So that was just one of the charges that got him sentenced to death, and he got pardoned for it anyway. But the authorities aren't kidding around when they ban this stuff. So it is really toxic. The beetles in question are using it for their own protection, but they're also using it to protect their eggs. And when they mate, one of the components of the sperm packet that the male passes on to the female is a large amount of the Cantharides poison that she then uses to protect her for her eggs. Right, more stupid ideas. This is more recent. You may have seen the claim that if you're going to be eating honey, use a wooden spoon. Has anybody seen that one anywhere? Okay, because supposedly a metal spoon will kill the enzymes in the honey. This is stupid in at least 5 different ways. Enzymes aren't alive. Honey production uses metal tools these days. Enzymes get digested in the stomach anyway, and even if they got past the stomach and into your bloodstream, they'll be recognised as foreign chemicals and induce an immune reaction. Any of the enzymes that are already in honey, you've already got the equivalent of them, and if you didn't have them, you'll be dead. And the only exception of an enzyme found in honey that you don't have, you wouldn't want, because it produces hydrogen peroxide. Also, apitherapy, that is the use of bee venom injections to treat arthritis, rheumatism and the like. This is also an intensely stupid idea. Not least because repeated, it's based on the claim that beekeepers don't get arthritis. That's wrong. Even if they get arthritis less often than other professions, some profession has to get arthritis less often than others. It happens to be bees. But repeated exposures of the bee venom can actually cause serious joint issues. You're also getting these bee sting injections often enough that getting anaphylactic shock and dying from it is an actual risk, and people have died from anaphylactic shock after getting apitherapy. And of course, they don't, there's no sterile technique in that picture. They're not sterilising the bees or sterilising your skin. So getting a repeated risk of cutaneous bacterial infections and that as well. So silly idea. There's, of course, a lot of research going into insect venoms, bee venoms, wasp venoms and so forth to see what kind of useful medicines can be derived from them. I couldn't find one example of insect-derived compound that actually got to market, because even if it works in the Petri dish, it's not necessarily going to work in vivo. So, it was a fairly rushed talk, so maybe there are a couple of examples of insect-derived medicines out there that actually work. But nothing to remember about a lot of the alternative medicines, because they're even trying to derive homeopathic remedies out of insects. And homeopathy depends on having a look at what condition you've got, finding some kind of chemical that gives you the same sort of symptoms, and then diluting it so far that there's no molecules of that substance left, and then the water miraculously remembers that what you put in it. Then you take it, and taking something that causes the same symptoms will supposedly cure the original problem, and somehow the water doesn't remember every dinosaur butt it's been through in the last 4.5 billion years. If the directions for use say, if you've got a severe headache, take 2 pills instead of, for example, diluting the pill you've got 10 more times to make it stronger. There are people trying to use insect-derived compounds in homeopathic remedies, quote marks. So there might be some actual medicines derived from insects out there, but I do have a couple of examples of actual therapies derived from insects that work. This one is actually a lot older. This one has been found by groups all over the world. We've got large aggressive ant species. In this case, it's the army ants. These are being used as living sutures. Because when you've got a small wound that needs to be held shut to help clear, you hold the ant on the wound, and when it clamps its jaws on it, you twist the head off. So the jaws then remain in place, holding the edges of the wounds closed. And additionally, because ant saliva contains some really interesting actual antibiotic compounds, it may be reducing the amount of infection in the wound as well. So this one actually works, and it's actually used by various groups around the world, including in Australia. So this one I can respect because it works. But another quite ancient treatment that's quite used in modern medicine these days to great effect is using maggot in wound debridement. This has been used after battles through for thousands of years at least. It's been used in prison camps where the captured soldiers aren't getting proper medical care. They're actually using maggots to clean the wounds. This actually works really well because a lot of the maggots they're using, including the Cilia caprina in this case, will only eat dead tissue, and the maggot's own saliva contains a number of really quite potent antibiotics. the antibiotics aren't universal. It only kills some of the bacteria that can infect the wound, but magnet treatment of wounds can save lives. They use them these days, for example, with diabetic ulcers. It's done properly and with properly raised flies. It has fantastic results for the recovery of the wound. Even the way that the maggots are actually nibbling on the flesh seems to encourage cell growth. So this one I can actually respect because it works. They've treated it very seriously, done properly. It can be miraculously effective for preventing gangrene from spreading wildly. So. Right, and I think that was it. So, any questions?
What about leeches?
Leeches on insects.
Yeah.
With the ant stitches, can it be, did you say a specific type of ant or?
Depends what part of the world you're in. For example, in South America, it's the army ants. You also got the driver ants. In Africa, or is it the other way around? I didn't find out what species they do use in Australia. Quite likely it's going to be the bull ants because they've got large enough jaws to be effective. I don't know. I'm not sure which genus of ant was used in Australia. So.
And then you take the head off.
Yeah.
But then aren't you chucking the jaw away?
No, they twist the head off at the neck, so you got the head and the jaws still attached to the wound. So.
The body.
Throw the body away.
Oh, you throw the body away to leave the head?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
It was the Malaysia. I did use the big bull ants name.
Worked?
Yeah, apparently.
Okay.
I haven't tried it.
Right, yeah.
Oh.
Any other questions?
With the apitherapy, you were saying like a stinging one, would they just have to have a whole beehive on deck? Because like the bees only sting once, so I assume they're not reusing those stings and things.
Well, a lot of the making money out of supplementary, complementary, and alternative medicine. Remember that acronym. Is making sure you come back every week for more. So yes, that's one of the reasons why getting anaphylactic shock from repeated apitherapy is a very real risk, because you're getting multiple bee stings every week. So I do not have much respect for a lot of alternative medicine because they have what actual study is out there. Any effect that they get vanishes in a properly blinded, double-blind study. And quite often the journals that they're getting published, for pay for play. So they pay the money to put the result in, or it's the in-house journal for whatever, say, homeopathic organisation that is doing it. They never agree on what mechanisms actually are working. The mechanisms that they do claim are just complete scientific nonsense. And yet there's no care taken for, is it safe to actually use this supposed alternative medicine in conjunction with other medicines? There's no control of the dosage, whether it's even the actual stuff that they claims in the medicine. So I do not have any respect for supplementary, complementary, and alternative medicine. So, right. Any other questions? No? Okay then. Yes, if alternative medicine works, it will be called medicine. Right. Okay. Right. Other news. Okay, you may have heard this week that the Queensland fruit fly has now been found around Perth. If you've got any if you're south of the river and you've got any fruit or vegetables in your gardens, you should probably discard them just in case. The Q fly is really destructive of fruits and vegetables, and it's a disaster that it's now shown up over here. I've also managed to find another active site for the European house borer around Perth, so yay, because I found a live one. I reported it to DPED and they're investigating. The European house borer is mostly a pest of treated timber, so it can be damage the timbers inside house roofs and whatnot. in the wild is feeding mostly on the dead wood of pine trees, but when you've got softwood timbers inside houses, they're vulnerable to the European house borer attack. So yeah, I've informed Diphead about that and they're investigating. Hopefully next year we can get somebody to come out from Diphead to tell us about progress with the polyphagia shot-hole borer, Q-fly, European house borer, and some of the other invasive problems that they've had lately. We'll contact them and line them up for a talk next year with any luck. Anybody else have any other news?
With that Q-fly, I
Yes.
saw on Facebook there's a lot of comments from people, and they were saying that the government has relaxed the laws with screening the importation of fruit from the eastern states.
Well, if we get, one of the reasons was that we're to try and stop Q-fly getting over here. So Q-fly does get established over here, and they're not going to give up on trying to restrict any more coming over. But the Diphead and that have been really overworked dealing with polyphagia shot-hole borer and the other issues. They just haven't had the man hours available.
Yeah, no, that's a man thing, but
Yeah.
they actually relaxed the laws with spraying or screening stuff coming in.
Well, that's probably how the Q-fly got here. So,
Yeah.
but
You can't trust Facebook, but that's what
Yeah.
the comments were, yeah.
But yeah, so that's another headache for Diphead.